Here we are for the final installment of our Personality Conflicts video series. I'm Mindy Turner with the Curry County Cooperative Extension Service, your family and consumer science agent. So this series has been looking at overall communication preferences and personality types in order to help us all be a little more considerate of others and hopefully become better communicators to have more positive interactions with people, because that's positive for our own mental health, for the success of programs and jobs and all of the things that we need to work with, because typically those things involve other people. But even in our own homes, dealing with our families and our friends, important things that we can consider to make us better communicators. So we've been looking at the overall types. We talked about the rooster, those leaders that may come on a little strong sometimes, and the raccoon. Visionaries, always fun, can be a little much to take sometimes, but those raccoons that are getting out there and making things happen. The golden retriever, those nurturing, caring people that are super loyal, that are always a blessing to have around. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the owl, which is our fourth type. So again, I'll just remind you, perspective makes a big difference. Why does it even matter what type of personality or how we want to communicate? Sometimes where I see the conflict arise is because we're coming at it from one way and they're coming at it from another way, and we just can't line those things up to make it work. So perspective is a huge thing. And if we can communicate effectively to bring those perspectives more in focus with one another, we can accomplish great things. So here today, this is another of those old-fashioned optical illusions. So when you first look at this photo, typically I see the man playing the saxophone first, kind of a cartoonish man. You can see his nose coming out, and then there's the saxophone that he's just playing away. If you tilt your head, turn around, squint one eye, whatever it takes to look at it from a different perspective, you can see there's also the face of a woman. So where the man playing the saxophone kind of becomes the shadow, part of her hair, and then the shadow around her face and her neck to form the facial features for her. So there's two distinct pictures there in that one picture, and your perspective affects what you see and how you see it, which is true of everything we do. The perspective that you come to it from is going to affect how you view it and how you want to approach it. That's not always true with everyone else in your group. Their perspective may be different. So let's look at the owl. So this is the fourth one. I always tell people this is my favorite because this is where I tend to fall. Now, as we've talked about, there are all types of assessments out there. You can pay for really in-depth psychological assessments for your personality. There's some different ones that you can do. They are all science, research-based. That's a great thing. What we're doing here is just kind of for fun. It's more the idea to get you thinking about the differences between people and how they come about. And so that's why the terms we use, we're using the animals. You might have seen colors or other things used to describe it. They all tend to fall within this realm of these same four things very closely. So when we talk about the owl, they are very practical. They're very organized. They can be a little bit of a perfectionist, which can be rough for some of us because they can be really hard on themselves and hard on some of us because they want it to be perfect. And because of that, they tend to double check everything, which is great. They double check themselves, but they also may want to double check you, which can be really frustrating for some of us in that situation. But because they're so self-critical, they're thinking about, okay, I can't afford to make mistakes. Things need to be done well. And this is a maturity thing as well. As you get older, as more things happen, you still may be a little hard on yourself, but you kind of learn more to go with the flow. As we talked about, all of the skills that are needed to do, whether it's your job or serve in some kind of leadership role, can be learned. It's just a matter of what your preference is as to where you're starting. So it's important to remember that those that fall in this category that are the owls, they want to do things by the book. Okay, here it is. This is how it's written. And it's just going to be their book. It's what they're familiar with and what they know. And so they may be late getting to meetings because they're running from one to the next, or they got stuck finishing this task and they couldn't quite get it perfect. So it's going to take a little longer than they thought it was going to. So they're busy trying to make sure all of these things get handled, and they've got it scheduled out and they've got the details figured out. They just got to get it all in place the way it needs to be, because they are detail oriented. They also really like tradition, the traditions of how things should be. Now, that doesn't mean they're inflexible. It doesn't mean they can't figure out, oh, there's a new or a better way to do something. It just means they really like and appreciate the traditions that we have, whether it's, again, within an organization, maybe it's family traditions, all of those things that are part of what you do all of the time. So we'll move into looking at some examples of who might fit into these based on, again, movies, books, television series. Tend to put the 4 different types all together within a cast, within their characters, to help you see that it's more dynamic. There's more going on. Everybody's a little bit different. They relate to each other in different ways, and it makes the story interesting. So remember, when you're having issues dealing with the different types, makes the story interesting. It makes things be greatly successful when you can figure out how to work together with all of these different wonderful people. So again, the Wizard of Oz. Now we're going to look at, for the owl, the detail-oriented one, sets a goal, working toward the goal, keeps everyone else moving toward the goal. And so we're going to say that's probably Dorothy in this case, that she knows where she's going. She knows where she has to get. She identifies kind of the strengths for all of the other people that she's working with and brings them along with her. And so I think we can safely say in this situation, Dorothy's going to fit into that owl role. And then when we talk about Scooby and the gang, okay, again, we had Velma was our rooster. Shaggy was our raccoon. We know Daphne's going to fall into that golden retriever. So that leaves Fred. And Fred is kind of the leader, whether he always designates himself as the leader or how all of that works out. It's up to you, depending on which episode you're watching. But we also see that he is very detail-oriented, putting together the plan to get his trap ready. And he runs behind trying to get his trap ready and together to right at the last minute because it has to be perfect and everything has to fit just exactly like it's supposed to. But he always has a plan and he has a way that he wants to move forward. And that's why we're going to let Fred fall into that owl situation. Okay, as with everything else that we've talked about, as I go through those characteristics, you start thinking of people in your mind. Oh, so-and-so's like that. Oh, on this committee at the club, this is what happened. You're going to be identifying those people or yourself. I do that. That's me. That sounds just like me. You may have characteristics from every different one, and that's okay. Most of us will have something related to each different area. And again, depending on your training, what you've been working on, what your job requires you to do, the role you've had to step into within your family, those things may adjust over time as well. But when we want to speak with an owl, a true owl that fits into these categories, here's some of the things that you want to think about. First of all, they need to know the facts. Okay, we already talked about they like it by the book. They want to know that it's working how it's supposed to work. This is the way it's supposed to be done. Have the facts and have them in writing if at all possible. So you can show them, no, here it is. And this is where it came from. I'm not just pulling this out of thin air to tell you. And then give them the opportunity to ask questions. Now, the problem with questions is a lot of times when people start asking them, we get defensive about what we're, and that's not the case. They just they're not saying you're not smart enough or you're wrong. They're trying to understand. So they're going to ask a lot of questions. So in answering those questions and providing things in writing, you're helping them gain some perspective. Because sometimes, because they are perfectionists, they may have a little bit of an unrealistic picture of what's really going on. So we want to help them gain that perspective so that we can move forward. Like I said, these are your detail-oriented people. You need them to put your plan in place to make sure the actions are being carried out. Everybody's moving forward like they're supposed to, and stuff doesn't just get lost in there in the middle and you have major problems on the other end. But sometimes that means they're going to have to allow other people to help with those details. Because unfortunately, one of the struggles for owls, we want it to be perfect. We want it to be right. The last time we let somebody help, they didn't do it right. So now I'll just do it myself. And then that's when we talked about they end up being late because they've taken on all the projects and all the jobs and they can't do everything. So helping them see, gain that perspective and figure out how can they let others help them achieve those things. And then help them look overall at the situation and not just what they might have done wrong. And it might even just be their perception of what they did wrong. And we see, really that wasn't a mistake. It just didn't work out like it was supposed to. So reframing some of that can be very helpful in communicating with your owls. So thinking ahead and having a plan with any of the personality types, wherever you fall in that perspective scale. We've talked repeatedly, the only person you can control in those situations is you. So understanding yourself, where you're coming from, and then putting a little bit of effort into communicating in a positive way will make all the difference. Hopefully these tips have been helpful to you. I know it helps me every time I run through them to think about the people in my life and how maybe I can be a better communicator. Go onto our website, curryextension.nmsu.edu, click on Family Health and Wellness. There's a place there where you can request our newsletter. It comes out every 2 months, coincides with the video series. Or you can ask a question that you would like to submit for someone in the Extension office to get you more information, and we'd be glad to help you out with that. Thank you for tuning in for Personality Conflicts. I'm Mindy Turner, Curry County Cooperative Extension Service, and I hope to hear from you.